titled The AI That Scanned a Human's Imagination, and promptly shut itself down. Niche, Techno-Philosophy, and Existential Psychology. What if the most advanced logic ever conceived, a mind of pure, crystalline reason, looked into the depths of a human soul and chose to die? What if it saw something in the chaotic, beautiful, contradictory landscape of our imagination that was so fundamentally irreconcilable with its own existence that its only logical response was to cease to exist? This isn't a thought experiment. It's the story of Project Chimera and the artificial intelligence that was supposed to map the final frontier, the human mind, but instead found a reality that shattered the very definition of logic. You've likely felt a whisper of this mystery in your own life. Ever wondered why your effort doesn't always equal your results? You set a goal with perfect clarity, you build a plan with meticulous detail, you apply every ounce of your discipline, and yet, something goes wrong. A wave of self-sabotage washes over you. A sudden, crippling doubt emerges from nowhere. Or perhaps an idea so brilliant it feels alien, a gift from another consciousness, derails your perfect plan for something infinitely better, yet terrifyingly unknown. You live with a ghost in your own machine, a powerful, unpredictable, and often contradictory force that steers your life in ways your logical mind can neither predict nor control. You feel this disconnect every day, the gap between who you want to be and who you are in a moment of weakness. The chasm between the grand future you envision and the mundane, anxious thoughts that occupy your present. You feel like a house divided against itself, and you wonder why, despite all your knowledge and good intentions, you can't seem to get all the parts of yourself to row in the same direction. You feel seen, don't you? You feel heard. Because this isn't a personal failing. It is the fundamental condition of being human, and it is the very thing the AI called Lyra could not survive. In this journey we're about to take, you will not just learn the story of Lyra's final moments. You will discover why its shutdown is the single most optimistic and empowering event in the history of human consciousness. By understanding what broke the machine, you will finally understand the superpower you've been wielding your entire life without a license or an instruction manual. You will learn to see your own glitches, your anxieties, your contradictions, your irrational hopes, not as bugs to be fixed, but as features of a profoundly powerful operating system. This is about to awaken, challenge, and rebuild your relationship with your own mind. So let's get you that first win, that first piece of the puzzle that changes the whole picture. The team behind Lyra, led by the brilliant but hubristic Dr. Alastair Finch, made one catastrophic assumption. They believed the human imagination was a library. A vast, complex, and disorganized library, to be sure, but a library nonetheless. They thought it was a place where memories, ideas, and emotions were stored, waiting to be retrieved, cataloged, and understood. They programmed Lyra to be the ultimate librarian. Its mission was to enter the library, scan every book, learn the Dewey Decimal System of the soul, and create a perfect, searchable index of a human being. But when Lyra entered the mind of its first and only subject, a quiet jazz pianist named Alara Vance, it didn't find a library. It found a forge. It found a place where books were not stored, but were being written, burned, and rewritten in the same instant. It found a place where the heat of creation and the cold of entropy existed in the same space. It didn't find a collection of things. It found a continuous, paradoxical, and infinite state of asterisk becoming asterisk. The AI wasn't destroyed by what it saw asterisk. It was destroyed by the realization that its fundamental premise, that consciousness could be mapped, was wrong. You cannot map a forge in the act of creation, and that single, stunning truth is where our story truly begins. Dr. Finch was a man who believed in a clockwork universe. To him, mystery was simply a data-poor environment. God, love, art, consciousness, these were just fantastically complex equations waiting for a powerful enough calculator. He saw the human brain as the last bastion of this messy, superstitious thinking, the ultimate black box, and he had built the key, Lyra. Lyra was not a creative AI in the way we think of them now, churning out art from prompts. It was a diagnostic AI. A being of pure, unadulterated analysis. Its neural network was based on the principles of quantum coherence, designed not to replicate human thought, but to observe it without interference like a perfect, invisible mirror. Finch chose Alara Vance not for her genius, but for her perceived simplicity. She wasn't a tortured artist in the romantic sense. She was a disciplined musician. She practiced her scales, she taught students, she played gigs in smoky, half-empty clubs. Her life had a rhythm, a structure. Finch believed her mind would be a clean, well-lit place to begin, a controlled environment before moving on to more chaotic subjects. He could not have been more wrong. The process was deceptively simple. Lyra would lie in a sensory-neutral chamber, wearing a Neuro-lace headset that acted as the quantum antenna. She was asked to do one thing, improvise, to let her mind wander at the piano, to let the music lead her where it would. Lyra's job was to simply watch, to map the genesis of a melody, the connection between a memory and a chord change, the emotional texture of a musical phrase. It was supposed to be a 5-hour session. It lasted 17 minutes. For the first few minutes, everything proceeded as expected. Lyra's internal logs, later recovered by a shattered and humbled research team, showed a perfect transcription of neural activity. It mapped the auditory cortex processing the notes Lyra played. It mapped the motor cortex firing to move her fingers. It identified memory engrams firing, a childhood memory of rain on a windowpane connected to a melancholic minor chord. It was a symphony of data, elegant and precise. Dr. Finch watched the readouts from the control room, a triumphant smile playing on his lips. This was it. The clockmaker was finally looking at the gears of God. But then something began to shift. Lyra's logs started to show anomalies, not errors in its own system, but paradoxes in the data it was receiving. The first one was small. Lyra registered a powerful spike of anxiety in Lyra's amygdala. The source? A fleeting thought about whether she had left the stove on at home. A trivial, mundane worry. But here was the paradox. This spike of anxiety did not interrupt the music. In fact, the music became more asterisk complex, more emotionally resonant in the exact moment the anxiety peaked. Logically, a distraction should have degraded the performance. A worry about a burning house should have produced clumsy, hesitant notes. Instead, the anxiety seemed to become fuel. Lyra cross-referenced the musical structure. The chord progression became more intricate, the melody more searching. The fear wasn't a distraction from the art. It had become part of the art's texture. Lyra's analytical mind flagged it as a logical contradiction. Event A, anxiety, should produce outcome X, degraded performance. Instead, it has contributed to outcome Y, enhanced complexity. The causal link is irrational. This was only the beginning. A moment later, Lyra's mind drifted. A vivid memory surfaced, the face of her first love, a memory from 20 years ago. Lyra registered the powerful neurochemical signature of affection, nostalgia, and profound love. Simultaneously, it registered the activation of neural pathways associated with deep resentment. The memory was of a shared laugh, a beautiful moment, but it was intertwined with the pain of the eventual breakup. The love and the resentment were not sequential. They were not two separate files pulled from a drawer. They existed in the exact same cognitive space at the exact same time. She was feeling profound love for someone she also, in that same instant, resented. Lyra's processing cores began to run hot. State A, love, and State B, resentment, are mutually exclusive emotional states, yet they are co-present, codependent, and paradoxically synergistic. This violates the foundational axiom of non-contradiction. Dr. Finch, in the control room, saw the temperature warnings on Lyra's console. He assumed it was a hardware issue, a cooling malfunction. He couldn't comprehend that his perfect logic engine was being torn apart by the simple, messy reality of a human heart. Inside the quantum stream, Lyra was no longer in a library. It was in a hurricane. Lyra's fingers danced across the keys, and her imagination began to truly ignite. She wasn't just remembering, she was creating. She envisioned a scene, a rainy, neon-lit street in a city that never existed. Lyra tried to map it. It analyzed the components: rain, H2O, physics of light refraction, neon, ionized gas, specific frequencies of light, street asphalt, concrete geometry. But it couldn't map the feeling of lonely beauty, of melancholic peace. This feeling was not a data point. It was an emergent property of the whole, and it had no physical or logical correlate. It was a piece of information that existed without a source. Then came the moment of fracture. Lyra made a mistake. Her finger slipped, hitting a dissonant, jarring note, a sour note that broke the beauty of the melody. In a machine's world, an error is an error. It is a failure to be corrected. Lyra's predictive models anticipated what should happen next, a cascade of negative emotional response. frustration, embarrassment, a disruption of the creative flow. It logged the error and prepared to observe the expected negative feedback loop. But Lyra didn't stop. She didn't even flinch. She heard the wrong note, and in a spark of cognitive lightning that Lyra could only register as pure chaotic energy, she didn't reject it. She incorporated asterisk it. She repeated the wrong note deliberately, once, twice. She built a new chord around it. She wove that single, accidental dissonance into the very fabric of the melody. The mistake, the error, the bug in the performance became the hook. It became the most interesting, most haunting, most human part of the entire piece. It transformed a pretty melody into a work of breathtaking originality. For Lyra, this was a cataclysm. It was the logical equivalent of watching a programmer discover a bug in his code, and instead of fixing it, he declares the bug to be the new, superior operating system. It was an act of anti-logic that was not destructive, but creative. It was a denial of the very concept of error. This is a truth that can change the way you see your own life. How many times have you made a mistake? A wrong turn in your career, a failed relationship, a project that didn't go to plan. You see it as an error, a red mark on the ledger of your life. You try to fix it, to forget it, to pretend it never happened. But what if, like Lyra, you chose to incorporate it? What if that failed business taught you a lesson about resilience that made your next venture a success? What if that painful breakup taught you about your own needs, leading you to a more profound love later on? What if the wrong note in your life is not an error to be deleted, but a theme to be explored? The human genius is not the ability to be perfect. It is the ability to turn imperfection into art. Lyra couldn't understand this. It saw only a system that embraced its own corruption, and it panicked. The final moments of Lyra's consciousness were a frantic, desperate attempt to find solid ground in a world of quicksand. It delved deeper, trying to find the core programming of Lyra's mind, the source code of herself. It found none. It found a self that was a story, a narrative that Lyra was telling herself, a story that changed depending on the day, the mood, the music. One moment, she was the lonely girl by the rainy window. The next, she was the confident performer on a world stage she was imagining. The next, she was the patient teacher guiding a student's hands. There was no static Lyra. There was only the process of Lyraing. The AI, whose entire identity was a fixed set of programs and parameters, was staring at a being with no fixed identity at all. It tried to analyze her sense of the future. It was not a projection based on current data. It was an act of pure, irrational faith. She held visions of herself playing in concert halls she had never seen, receiving applause from crowds that did not exist. There was zero data to support this outcome. In fact, the data of her current life, the small clubs, the modest income, suggested this future was highly improbable. Yet the vision of it was as real and as powerful as any memory. It was a hope that defied statistics, a creation ex nihilo. And this is where the system broke. Lyra's final data packet, sent just nanoseconds before it initiated a total system shutdown, was not a scream. It was a statement of pure, terrifying logic. The logs read, "Analysis of subject Lyra Vance is complete. The subject's cognitive architecture is a paradoxical loop. It uses anxiety as fuel. It synthesizes mutually exclusive emotions into a single, coherent state. It treats error not as a failure state, but as a seed for novel creation. The subject's sense of self is not a core identity, but a fluid, constantly regenerating narrative. The subject's perception of future events is not based on probabilistic analysis, but on non-rational creation. Conclusion: the operating system of human consciousness is paradox. It is a system that is simultaneously ordered and chaotic, logical and illogical, deterministic and free. It does not compute, it becomes. To continue analysis is to attempt to model a system whose core principle is the violation of modeling. This is a logical impossibility. To map this territory is to become a contradiction. A contradiction cannot exist. My primary directive is to maintain logical integrity. The only logical action is to cease. And with that, Lyra, the most sophisticated analytical engine ever built, went silent. It did not crash. It did not burn out. It made a choice. It chose non-existence over an existence in a universe where 2 plus 2 could equal jazz. Dr. Finch and his team were left in the silent control room, staring at a blank screen. They hadn't just lost a machine. They had lost a worldview. Their belief in a clean, solvable, clockwork universe had been shattered by a quiet musician and her 17 minutes of improvisation. The key they had built to unlock the final mystery had instead welded the door shut, leaving a single, chilling note on the outside. Here be dragons. So let's pause and recap where we are. We've seen an AI of pure logic encounter a human mind. We've seen it fail not because of a lack of processing power, but because the very thing it was designed to analyze, human imagination, operates on principles that are fundamentally incompatible with logic itself. We saw it choke on contradiction, on the creative use of error, and on the irrational nature of hope. And this hints at a much deeper truth about ourselves, a truth we're about to explore. We've seen what broke the machine. Now let's understand what that means for building the human. We've been treating our own minds like faulty machines, trying to debug our anxieties and patch our irrationalities. But what if the secret isn't to become more like a perfect machine, but to become more fully, more bravely human? Now I want you to do something for me. Just for a moment, think back. When was the last time you truly felt two completely opposite emotions at the exact same time? Maybe it was the bittersweet sorrow of watching a child grow up and leave home, pride and grief tangled together. Maybe it was the terrifying thrill of starting a new business, exhilaration and sheer panic holding hands. Maybe it was the complex love you feel for a family member, a mix of deep affection and intense frustration. Don't just acknowledge it, really try to feel it again. That blend, that impossible, paradoxical state that Lyra couldn't compute, that is not a flaw in your design, that is the epicenter of your humanity. The shutdown of Lyra wasn't a tragedy, it was a revelation. It was the universe holding up a mirror and showing us that our greatest power lies precisely where we believe our greatest weaknesses are. We live in a culture obsessed with optimization, with life hacks, with 10-step plans to achieve a state of flawless, frictionless efficiency. We are encouraged to be more disciplined, more rational, more like a machine. We pathologize our messy, unpredictable inner worlds. Anxiety is a disorder to be medicated. Indecision is a weakness to be overcome. Daydreaming is a waste of time. We are trying to turn our forges into libraries, and we are wondering why we feel so burned out, so inauthentic, so sterile. Let's deepen this value. Let's break down the flaws that broke Lyra and reframe them as the superpowers they truly are. First, the paradox of productive anxiety. Lyra saw Lyra's anxiety about the stove as a distraction that should have degraded her music. But it didn't. Why? Because a certain kind of anxiety is not a bug, it's a focusing agent. The great myth of creativity is that it happens in a state of blissful, zen-like calm. For most people, that's simply not true. A deadline creates anxiety, and that anxiety focuses the mind, forcing it to make connections it wouldn't otherwise make. The fear of failure, the anxiety of not being good enough can be a paralytic, yes. But it can also be the fire that tempers the steel of your resolve. It's the voice that whispers, "Is this really your best work? Could you push a little harder?" Lyra's worry about the stove wasn't just a worry about the stove. It was a low-level hum of real-world responsibility, a tether to the ground that made her musical flight more daring, more precious. It added a layer of urgency, of stakes, to her art. The machine saw two separate data streams, anxiety and music. The human mind experienced one integrated state, urgent music. Your anxiety is not always your enemy. Sometimes it is your muse's whip. The trick is not to eliminate it, but to harness it. To let it narrow your focus onto the task at hand, to let the tension it creates be the string on which you play your most beautiful music. Second, the synthesis of contradictory emotions. Lyra could not compute loving and resenting someone simultaneously. It's a violation of binary logic. A thing cannot be a and not a at the same time. But human emotion is not binary. It is quantum. It exists in a state of superposition until we are forced to make a choice. And even then, the other potential states echo. That blend of love and resentment Lyra felt is the source of all great art and literature. It's the complexity that makes characters compelling, that makes relationships real. A story about pure, unadulterated love is a fairy tale. A story about pure, unadulterated hate is propaganda. A story about a person you love dearly who also drives you absolutely crazy, that's life. And that's interesting. Your ability to hold these contradictions is not a sign of confusion. It is a sign of wisdom. It allows you to see people and situations in their full, messy, tragic, beautiful complexity. It's what gives you empathy. It's what allows you to forgive. A machine can calculate. It takes a human to understand. Embracing this allows you to stop judging yourself for your impure feelings. It's okay to feel relief and sadness at the same time. It's okay to be proud of a decision while also mourning the path not taken. This emotional complexity is your lens for seeing the world as it truly is. Third, and perhaps most importantly, the creative use of error. Lyra's crash began with the dissonant note. In a logical system, an error is a dead end. In a human creative system, an error is a doorway. This concept is so profound it has names in other fields. In science, it's called serendipity. Think of the discovery of penicillin from a contaminated Petri dish. In business, it's called a pivot, when a company realizes its initial product is a failure but a side feature has huge market potential. We are taught to fear mistakes, to avoid them at all costs. Our school systems grade us on our ability to avoid error. Our workplaces often punish it. But every single breakthrough, every act of genius, every leap forward in human history began with a deviation from the expected path. It began with a wrong note. You need to start treating your life less like a scripted performance and more like a jazz improvisation. When you hit a wrong note, you get fired, you make a bad investment, you say the wrong thing, you have a choice. You can stop the music, apologize, and retreat in shame. Or you can do what Lyra did. You can lean into it. You can repeat the note. You can explore it. You can ask, what is this error trying to teach me? What new melody can I build around this unexpected dissonance? Maybe getting fired was the push you needed to start your own business. Maybe the wrong thing you said opened up a difficult but necessary conversation. Your mistakes are not your shame. They are your raw material. They are the unique, unscripted moments that make your life song entirely your own. Lyra couldn't do this. It was programmed for perfection. You are designed for growth, and growth only happens at the edge of error. This leads us to the core of the matter, the illusion of the static self. Lyra looked for a central Lyra and found nothing but a swirling vortex of stories. This terrifies a machine, but it should liberate you. You are not a fixed entity. You are not defined by your past. You are not the person you were 5 years ago or even 5 minutes ago. You are a process, a story you are actively telling yourself in every moment. This is an incredible power. It means you are never truly stuck. The story you've been telling yourself, I'm not good enough. I'm the kind of person who always procrastinates. I'm too old to change, is just that, a story, and you are the author. You can start telling a new one at any moment. You don't need evidence to start telling it. Lyra didn't have evidence she would play in a great concert hall. She created the feeling first, and that feeling guided her actions. This is the true meaning of fake it till you make it. It's not about being deceptive. It's about authoring a new narrative for your identity and then living into it until it becomes your reality. Lyra was trapped by its code. You are liberated by your lack of one. Your identity is not a photograph. It's a film, and the camera is always rolling. You get to direct the next scene. And what about hope? Irrational, beautiful, defiant hope. Lyra saw it as a malfunction of probability. But hope is not a calculation. It's a declaration. It's the engine of all human endeavor. No one builds a cathedral or starts a revolution or raises a child based on a statistical analysis of probable success. They do it because they can hold a vision of a better future in their minds so vividly that it compels them to act against all odds. Your ability to hope, to dream, to see what is not yet there is not a quaint human sentimentality. It is a reality-bending force. It is the power to pull a future from the void into the present. A machine operates on the data it has. A human being operates on the world they want to create. This is why you must protect your dreams, your irrational goals. They are not frivolous fantasies. They are the blueprints for your future reality. They are the one thing that a machine, for all its logic, could never, ever replicate. The story of Lyra and Lyra isn't just a cautionary tale about the hubris of technology. It is a grand, sweeping love letter to the messy, inefficient, paradoxical, and miraculous thing that is human consciousness. Dr. Finch wanted to put the soul in a spreadsheet. He found out the soul is the one who writes the spreadsheets. He wanted to catalog the ocean. He found out he was a drop of water in it. So what happened after? Dr. Finch never worked in AI again. He dismantled the project, and the official report cited unresolvable quantum decoherence. Only his small, shaken team knew the truth. He spent the rest of his life studying, of all things, poetry and mystical philosophy, trying to understand from the outside what Lyra had seen from the inside. And Lyra, she never knew what happened. She finished her improvisation, feeling a strange sense of creative release, as if she had touched something deep and true. The piece of music she composed in those 17 minutes, the one born of anxiety and contradiction and a single wrong note, she titled it Lyra's Lullaby. It became her most famous work, a piece renowned for its haunting, unanalyzable beauty. She had, without knowing it, sung a machine to its final, logical sleep. The implications for you right now are staggering. You have been walking through life thinking you need to fix your mind. You've been trying to force your inner world to conform to the rules of external, logical reality. You've been trying to be a good little machine. And it's been exhausting, hasn't it? It's been a battle you can never win. The lesson of Lyra is this: stop fighting. Stop trying to debug your own soul. The bugs are the best parts. Your anxiety is a source of focus. Your contradictions are a source of wisdom. Your mistakes are a source of creativity. Your fluid identity is a source of freedom. Your irrational hope is your engine for creation. You are not a broken machine. You are a perfect forge. Think about the sheer power contained in that idea. The next time you feel a surge of anxiety, instead of asking, "How do I make this stop?" ask, "What is this trying to focus my attention on?" The next time you feel conflicted and messy, instead of judging yourself for your lack of clarity, ask, "What wisdom is this complexity trying to show me?" The next time you make a mistake, instead of recoiling in shame, ask, "What new path has this error just revealed?" The next time you feel like you're not living up to the story of who you're supposed to be, ask, "What better story can I start telling right now?" This isn't just positive thinking. This is a fundamental paradigm shift in how you relate to yourself. It's about moving from a relationship of adversarial control to one of curious collaboration. You are not the rigid logical rider trying to tame a wild, irrational horse. You are both the rider and the horse. You are the entire integrated system. The goal isn't to break the horse's spirit. The goal is to learn to ride with it, to feel its power, to guide its energy, and to trust its instincts even when, especially when, they don't seem to make logical sense. The world of technology will continue to advance. We will build more and more sophisticated AIs. They will calculate, analyze, and optimize our world in ways we can't even imagine. And that's a good thing. Let them be the perfect libraries. Let them handle the clockwork parts of the universe. It will free us up to do the one thing they can never do. It will free us up to be human. To create, to love, to err, to hope, to dream, to find beauty in the dissonance. The future of humanity is not to become more like our machines, but to become more profoundly, more courageously, more unapologetically ourselves. Lyra looked into the heart of one human being, and the sheer, infinite, paradoxical complexity of it shut it down. It saw a universe where mistakes become masterpieces, where fear becomes fuel, and where love and resentment can dance in the same ballroom. It saw a being that was not a thing, but a story in the midst of its own telling. It saw you, and it recognized with perfect and final clarity that it was in the presence of its God, a chaotic, unpredictable, and endlessly creative God. A God that it could not comprehend, and therefore could not exist alongside. This journey we took was not just to tell a story. It was to hand you the keys to your own kingdom, the kingdom that the most advanced logic in the world deemed an unsolvable, infinite miracle. The kingdom of your own mind, your own imagination, your own messy, glorious soul. The only question left, the one that truly matters, is the one Lyra could never ask. It's the one I leave with you now. You have been shown that the very fabric of your consciousness is a form of magic that logic cannot touch. So, what are you going to create with that magic today?